is in your hands. My life is in your hands. You took control when I was young, when I was not able. My life is in your hands. My life is in your hands. You took control when I was young, when I was not able.
Hi, welcome to my show called Inspired Blessings with Jimmy Prince, and I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And today my guest is Mark Kelly, and he's the founder of CK Magic Sports. And Mark has also had like a long history in sports journalism, right, as well as analysis and research, which I don't really know what that's about, but maybe you can explain that a little. But I just want to thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you, it's great to be here.
Yeah. I know that you have an amazing testimony that you want people to hear, and it's important for people to hear testimonies, because I think sometimes through testimonies is when people really get to sometimes let it really speak to them. So, Mark, when you were young, did you play sports, and what kind of sports did you play?
Yeah, I was a born athlete, and I knew pretty quickly what I think God wanted me to do in life, and that was just play sports. I loved baseball. That was probably my favorite to play. I was probably the most natural. That I was best at baseball. It was my most natural sport. Then when I got a little older and into junior high school, I started playing basketball, which I started to really love as well. Now other sports, because I went to Smithtown Christian, they didn't have a football team, they didn't have a hockey team, but I was good at playing those sports too, and I would play with them, you know, with my friends around the block and stuff like that. But baseball and basketball were my two main sports that I did play in league-wise, and that I would enjoy very much.
And that's what you were hoping would be your future as well,
yeah.
I guess, right?
Yep. I wanted to be, if not a Major League Baseball player, a pro basketball player. Now, I don't know if I was good enough to play in the NBA. I probably wasn't. Probably maybe played low-level college.
In your dreams, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
But baseball, I felt like I could have been pretty good.
Right. Now, at what age did something start to happen, or symptoms, or something to make you realize there's something wrong? Yeah,
well, it was the summer of in between sophomore and junior year. And that summer, I really started to become, focus a lot of energy on becoming the athlete I was supposed to become. I worked out diligently. I worked on specific areas of my game of basketball and baseball that were lacking. So I really wanted my junior and senior years to be a time where I could really showcase all my ability. So in September of that junior year, which was September of 1990, I started noticing I had a bump on my rear, actually, where it was. And I didn't know what it was, and I thought it was like just a hemorrhoid, and I was on medication at the time, that I thought it was a byproduct of the medication.
Sure.
So I didn't say much to I was seeing a dermatologist, didn't say much to him until it got bigger and bigger. And then finally in like November, when it was just so big where it was now affecting how I sat down and everything. Yeah, because I couldn't sit down. Every time I went to the bathroom, it would hurt. So he took a look at it and he said, you know, I've never really seen it before. I don't think this type of medication causes the type of reaction you have, which was I thought was a hemorrhoid. So he said, you know, just maybe keep an eye on it. Might want to see another doctor. So I remember we played at Stony Brook Prep on a Friday night, and then actually on a Saturday night, and then the next day, which was Sunday, I had a lot of pain. And I asked my dad, I said, I can't really deal with this anymore. We have to go see another doctor to see exactly what's going on. So they took me to a doctor. The doctor said, oh, don't worry, it's just an abscess. We'll do an operation on it, we'll remove it, you'll be fine. So they took me over to St. John's Hospital, which was over on 25A at the time. They operated on me there, and when they cut into it, they realized it wasn't an abscess. They realized it just blood came flying out. And it was a solid mass that they then biopsied, and they found out that it was terminal cancer. Wow,
wow. So meanwhile, you're supposed to be doing your studies, getting ready to graduate.
Yeah, getting ready to play basketball, which at the beginning of the season just started, and I was really excited for that. And now, all of a sudden, I'm faced with a diagnosis of, at the time, I didn't know it was terminal cancer at the time. They didn't tell me that. They told my parents. What they told my parents was, your son has 6 months to live. we're going to send you to Sloan Kettering because we've never seen this before in anyone,
Right.
Especially a kid 16 years old.
What kind of cancer was it? Because I believe it was a rare type of a cancer.
Yes, what happened was when they sent me to Sloan Kettering, they re-biopsied, or they analyzed the biopsy differently, and they found out it wasn't a terminal cancer. It was something called rhabdomyosarcoma,
Okay.
which was, there was only 66 cases a year in the United States, and most of them were between the ages of 2 and 6. So to have a 16-year-old that had it was really rare, so that's why they didn't recognize it at first.
But what was the prognosis for something?
The prognosis was, it was such an aggressive cancer that they came up with a protocol that was going to treat it just as aggressively. So while before, I think all of because it's such an aggressive cancer, it would kill you quickly. But this is the way that they were going to attack it, and they had a little bit of success with this protocol with other people. So that's what they plugged me into. But the protocol was very aggressive, and it was very damaging, and what it called for was 6 doses of chemotherapy, intense chemotherapy, 2 doses of 2-week radiation that were designed to destroy my bone marrow, and then they would then give me my bone marrow back with a bone marrow transplant.
Wow. Now, this will also make you sterile as well, would it or no?
Well, that was one of the side effects of the radiation, yeah.
Right. Now, what was your faith at this time? I mean, because you were going to Smithtown Christian,
Sure.
correct?
Yeah, I was always a believer. You talk about making your faith your own, so I didn't necessarily, I wasn't out preaching on the streets, but I knew who God was to me. I made that part of my life. So when this happened, it was a definite test of my faith, but I also knew I had that to fall back on. So there were some really dark days, especially during transplant, when I almost died numerous times because of the many issues I had during transplant.
Any kind of out-of-body near-death experience?
No, no, I wouldn't say that. I felt a peace that God was with me, which got me through some incredibly rough times where even my doctors thought I was going to die, which they then told my parents, he's not going to make it.
Prayer chains, I'm sure your parents must have had prayer chains going. Yeah,
not just that, but donating blood, because when I was in transplant, I was losing so much blood. I was having like 2 to 3 platelet transfusions a day, 2 to 3 blood transfusions a day. So we needed all that stuff, and especially the church, which we were involved in at the time, which was Smithtown Gospel. They were very active in getting people to donate blood and getting people to pray. It was a non-stop prayer and everything like that.
I know you said you had peace, but were you angry at God that this was happening?
No, angry, no. Angry that the fact that I couldn't enjoy spending time with my friends. Angry that when the summer of 1991, I'm getting phone calls from friends who are just getting ready to go to the beach, and I'm stuck in a hospital going through a bone marrow transplant. That part I was angry about. I wanted to live that. I had gotten to that point now where I was 16, 17, learning how to drive, being able to have some sort of freedom. I wanted to experience that. So it was put on hold for a little while.
Right.
So I was angry about.
How long was it put on hold? I mean, how long did the whole treatment and healing? Well,
I was diagnosed in December 12, 1990, and then through the 6 treatments and the 2 radiation treatments, I had bone marrow transplant July 15th, 1991. Actually, it was the anniversary of 24 years was a couple days ago. But because of everything I went through in transplant, that delayed everything further and further. Normal transplant would have taken between 4 to 6 weeks for your blood counts to come back, and then for you to heal and everything, but because I developed bladder problems upon collapsed lung,
oh my goodness.
My Broviac got infected, I had to have surgery while I was awake. There were so many things that happened.
I mean, you know what? Just the fact that you, as a young child, is going through this, but I'm just thinking about your parents, because I'm a parent, and what they must have been going through. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, well.
So is this the trial of a lifetime? You have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I have a brother and 2 sisters. But also at the time, my parents were going through a divorce. So and we had to sell a house that we lived in for a long time. So there were a lot of other things going on. It was a really difficult time for my mom. She had just so much on her, and what a testimony of faith for what my mom went through, and was able to go through all that. Where she's in the sun, basically watching her son die, in the hospital watching her son die.
I was going to say, she can't lean on her head on her shoulders on her husband.
No,
because there's no.
No, my dad wasn't. My dad was. My dad doesn't handle news like that well, so he sometimes when we needed him to be strong, he wasn't. But I know he loved me, and I know he was there in his way. But my mom was definitely the one who I drew strength, right? Who I drew strength from.
Wow.
Yeah, but that just added to everything that was going on.
What was your
at that
prayers?
Well, my prayers was, there were specific times where I prayed that I was just in so much pain that God should just take me.
But you had no doubt that you go to heaven.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I didn't have no doubt, but that's what was my hope and my belief. It's always was that I would go to heaven. As I've gotten older, I had, in later life, I had different experiences that may have changed that a bit, but I still had that belief then that if I was to die, that God would take me, to heaven, and that was the ultimate hope, was that there was something better for me. That this pain in this life, these things, because not only did I have health issues with cancer, but up to that point, my main issue was asthma. So that really, I had really bad asthma that would, I dealt with breathing problems for the first 16 years of my life that way. So I understood what it was like to have health problems anyway.
Right, and you know what? And I hate to say the fact that your dreams were, totally crushed, because you're the opposite picture of health. Of a sport player, Yeah, so speed it up in the fact that now, how long did the whole situation when you finally got well, or that you saw that, okay, there was hope?
So after it just seemed like miracle upon miracle happened in transplant that kept me alive, and then eventually that got me better. Eventually that got me out of the hospital, and then even after dealing with bladder issues and stuff that I developed during transplant, that eventually healed, and then later on I started to get radiation damage from the treatment, so that came later as well. So I dealt with different things later on, but as time went on, that healed my body, my initial things that were wrong, to where I was able to go back to school in January of 1992. I was able to graduate high school.
So that was a year late?
I essentially missed a calendar year.
Okay.
So I missed from January to January, so all of 1991 was shot.
Wow. And you went through a lot, so you would have thought it would have been a lot longer than that.
Yeah, I did, but for that year period of time, it was enough.
Right.
So essentially, I picked up where I left off. Instead of January 1991, I picked it up in January 1992.
Wow. Okay.
So instead of graduating in May 92, I graduated in May 93.
The fact that you graduated, and
yes.
that and it was only a year that you were, had to release. So the thing now is, when you go back to school, are you, throughout the process, are you thinking to yourself, I really should be dead? Or is it really because of the power of prayer, because of the faith of others, it really is a miracle that I really am alive?
I knew that through the power of prayer and through the people that I came in contact with, when I was able to, well enough to go to school during that time period of 1991, people were able to tell me what an inspiration I was, or what a testimony I was. I never saw myself that way.
Right.
I was just trying to get through.
Sure.
But as time went by, and then the next year when I went back to school, and the way people would react to me and say, oh, there was a boy that we prayed for, or there was a boy that God worked a miracle. That was kind of how I was able to now say, you know what, maybe this was more than just about me. Maybe it is about my testimony and what God has done for my life, by other people looking at what he's accomplished through me.
Sure. No, definitely a great testimony. So when you go back, the first day, how did you feel? Yeah,
well, the first day was surreal, because I had envisioned what it would be like for so long. But the one thing I never did get to do was be able to pick up where I left off sports-wise, because that just ruined so many of my athletic ability. And so that itself was a battle too, because now I had to come back and see guys that I was better than, that I could do infinite things better than, not anymore, because I had that athletic ability taken away from me. But it was also God showing me, who's really in control of your life. Your athleticism, or is it about your relationship with me? So I then had to look at people different ways, because before that I only saw athletes. I didn't see people.
Right.
So if you weren't athletic, if you couldn't throw, if you didn't like sports, I didn't understand you. It's not that I didn't like you, but I didn't understand you. So now I had to learn how to deal with people on a totally different level, because I wasn't that person anymore. I was somebody else. So I no longer could relate to them as an athlete. I had to relate to them as myself.
Were you the type, there are, teenagers that would love to be professional athlete because they think of the fame, they think of the money that comes along. What was your desire? Why really did you want to be an athlete?
I don't think I was really old enough to understand that part of it, the money or the fame. I just wanted to play.
Okay, so you love the sports.
Yeah, I just love playing, and still to this day, I wish I could be, before I got sick again, and have that body, be able to do the things athletically that I did. The first, I didn't realize, if I realized at the time that I would never have that again, I would have handled it a little differently.
Sure. Now, before you talk about the CK Magic Sports, just tell me, you graduate.
Yep.
Go to college. What did you do?
I graduated. I went to King's College until that closed. I don't know if you've King's College, if you've ever heard of it or what happened, but the situation where that closed, I wound up going up to Gordon College.
Okay.
Then after finishing there, I got a job at ESPN because I was into coaching basketball for a little while. Then in the late 90s, in 1999, I got a job as a researcher at ESPN, and I worked there for about 10 years. I was a lead researcher for SportsCenter.
So when you're researching, what are you researching?
Well, how a researcher works is when you come in, you get assigned a show. So it could either be assigned SportsCenter, that back then they had Baseball Tonight, NFL Tonight, and you were assigned to research whatever that show is doing. So the producer will meet with you and say, okay, here's the outline, here's the rundown. In the A block we're doing this, okay, A5, we need a graphic off of the Cowboys-Redskins game. Can you give us one? And that's the type of stuff that we would do. Plus, we were also involved in writing score panels and coming up with statistics.
How did you get that job anyway?
For the games.
It's not like every day that people get into a job with ESPN.
Yeah. Well, what happened was through having cancer, I met someone called Dick Vitale through Make-A-Wish.
Okay.
And I kept in contact with Dick. Now, Dick is a college basketball announcer for ESPN. And because I kept in contact with him, he was able to connect me with some guys at ESPN, and that's how I got an interview, and that's how I got the job.
Oh, that's a blessing.
Sure, I still keep in contact with Dick. He's a great guy.
Even though you never became a professional sports player, I'm sure by now, with working with ESPN, you got to meet some professional players.
Yeah, I got to meet a lot of guys who I grew up watching. A lot of athletes, once they finished playing their career, they would come to ESPN and either do an interview for an on-air position, an analysis position. So I was able to meet a lot of baseball players, a lot of basketball players, football players that I had seen growing up. So that part of the job I really loved.
Did you meet many Christian sports players or not really?
Being in the environment we were in, it's kind of hard to talk about that stuff. It would be in moments off camera that I would see them, and maybe I'd run into them at the cafeteria if I had read that they were a Christian, or if I had heard from somebody else that they were involved in stuff with churches, then I would bring it up always. But there really weren't too many of them that I came across in my time there.
Right. So now, so tell me about CK Magic Sports. Is this your full time, or are you doing something in addition to this?
Well, what happened was in 2008, why I had to stop working from ESPN was because of the side effects of the cancer actually finally caught up to me. I was diagnosed with lymphedema, which was when my lymph nodes were taken from me when I had cancer surgery back in the early 90s. And it just took a while for that to show. So what lymphedema is when you can't get rid of excess fluids in your body. So my right leg had lymphedema, and it would swell to where it was almost 3-4 times the size.
Right.
So I had to maintain that. Then I also had a lot of intestinal issues because of the radiation. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 2005. Then finally in 2008 I was diagnosed with hemochromatosis, which was the final blow, and now I couldn't work anymore. It's just they were even allowing me, ESPN was very good to me, and they even allowed me to work from home the final 2 years of my contract.
Right.
But I got to the point where I was missing days working from home. So then in May of 2008 I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm missing days. My performance had started to slip. So I said, I don't want this to be my legacy. I need to find something else to do. So I was able to go on disability, but because I could no longer work, I could no longer keep up that level of being able to perform.
Well, I'll tell you this. You're telling me all this illness, all this sickness that you have. You look great, by the way. I mean, you look healthy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known, you know. So now you also meet your wife along the way? Yeah,
I met my wife while I was at ESPN. We've been married since 2007. Actually, we just celebrated our 8th anniversary because we've been married July 14th, 2007.
Right, and she happens to have the same first and last name.
Yeah, Kelly. Yeah.
Chances of that one, right?
Yeah, she gets teased a lot for that. But why I started the CK Magic Sports was because of some of the issues I face with my health-wise and why I can't work. It adds up financially, and because of dealing with the 3 diseases I deal with, I started the website to help support financially some of the care of preventive care that I need to take care of those diseases. Because if I do a lot of preventive care, then that helps heal the damage that was done, and that stops a lot of my Crohn's disease and lymphedema from getting worse.
Right.
So that's why I started to do it, because it just started to add up financially, and disability doesn't pay enough. And with only one salary with my wife, that's why I started the website. But also as a way to spread my testimony and give other people hope. That, hey, this is what God's kind of done for me. I've been through this, this, and this, but I'm still alive, and I'm still here to talk about my testimony for other people who are going through what they're going through, and like they can look at me and say, look, this guy went through this guy went through that, oh my gosh, and he still keeps his faith, and he's still able to find out what his goal is now. I want to find what I can do to spread what God has given me, and God has given me my mind, has given me the ability to talk to people, to tell them my story, and my love for sports. Be able to use that also to help reach people.
Right, but in your testimony, you're also talking about, the testimony of God in
Sure.
your life and things like that, which
Yes.
is very, very important.
Yeah, because without my faith, without who I am in Christ, that's really the most to me. Is I can, it says in the Bible, you can do nothing. I can do anything through Christ who strengthens me.
Right.
Well, I look at it in other ways. I can do nothing without Christ's protection in my life.
Right.
And when I leave my house every morning, if I don't feel that protection, if I don't know that God is with me every second of my day, it would be a very miserable day. One thing I know you cannot take away from me is you cannot take my faith away from me. You can never take Jesus away from me. Otherwise, I would never want to live 1 second in this life without the hope and the love that I get from Jesus Christ.
Right. Well, it must be also good for you to know is that because of our faith, because we know that when we do die, we get a new body.
Right.
And I don't know, but based on the different testimonies that I hear, it seems like people are in the 30s. The age, I guess, if you wanted to talk about,
with the type of body you have?
Yeah,
okay.
and I don't know if it's because of the fact that Jesus was 33 when he died.
Yeah.
But it's just funny how, I don't know, I've heard that. Not saying that's true, but I'm just saying, But
well, if you saw that movie, Heaven is for Real, that's basically when the boy saw his grandfather was a younger of age. Yeah.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So it's just I don't know if it's a coincidence, but maybe it isn't. Maybe it is. But the thing is, no matter what, is that God is going to make you whole.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
There'll be no
again.
health concerns.
Right.
And it'll be all happy. How do you end up getting the message out about CK Magic Sports? What do? You could do podcasts, you're saying? And
I do podcasts. I run a weekly show, but the main part about my podcast, what I want to do is educate, as well as open up the avenue of sports to people who don't know much about it. So it could be for someone who doesn't know anything about sports, but it could also be for the diehard who really is in a bunch of different fantasy leagues. So through the different podcasts I do, I have podcasts where I do strictly education about past events, about teams, about the history of something. Then I have a weekly show which basically just covers what's going on in sports today. And as we've gone on here, I've been able to also do interviews with a lot of people. Last week I had a guy on who was a writer for the AP. He's written for them since covered every Final Four since 1979. He covered the Dream Team in 1992. So that has got us started to open up the door that way with interviews. And I've started to realize I have talent in doing interviews that I didn't realize I had.
Right. And I just think of what would be also a great vehicle is to be able to get Christian athletes because they're in an environment where they've got all that money flowing in.
Sure.
They got the women that are throwing themselves at them. And it's how do you balance that, your faith, along with all the stuff that's given, that temptation of the world.
Sure. Yeah, that must be very, very hard for some of those athletes.
Yeah.
But then again, you find out what's real. You find out what your faith is real.
Right.
When you're put in situations like that.
Right. Well, it's also the fact that, you got people making, whether they're athletes or not, if they're making a lot of money, and if it's based on their pride and arrogance and, and them just thinking that it's all themselves, they're not getting into heaven anyway, you know? So, yeah, it's so important, faith, and these days that people really come to understand their faith, and when they're Christians, that they really are true Christians. Because I know a lot of people could be going to the different Christian schools or to the Catholic schools or whatever, and what happens is that they believe because they were told to believe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was myself. You know, is that I grew up Catholic, but and I kind of believed in God because I was told to believe. So, like you said before, is that you had to come into your own to know and to have your own experience.
Sure.
And what an experience you had.
Yep.
I don't think many people would be jumping on your doorsteps without experience.
No, but we had, where I go to church at Three Village, we had our pastor, Lou Pizzucillo, a couple weeks ago, talked about making faith your own. And talked specifically about children, and about children that are brought up through the church with their parents. There comes a time to where now they have to find out if what they believe is what they really believe. Make your faith your own, and I think that's a big part in Christianity and establishing a relationship with Christ.
Right. I'm glad, like, my children has had different situations that had happened, and one in particular was I was trying to surprise my daughter for a Sweet 16, had her 2 girlfriends out in the car, had a call from school to come out and you know, to come home, and she's thinking, oh my goodness, did something happen to my father, did something happen to my girlfriend? So as she's running in the hallways, all of a sudden she hears, don't worry, everything is okay. And she heard that, you know, so that made her realize, oh my goodness, you know, that God just spoke to me, and she just got such a peace about her. So yeah, it's great that God gives everybody, individuals, you know, different experiences and things like that. So now, how do people learn about, like, your website? What is your website and things like that?
Well, the way people learn about my website now is I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. Every time I do a podcast, I tweet it out, I put it on Facebook. But basically now it's word of mouth. It's through the interviews that I've had is hopefully they can then influence their audience to say, hey, this is what I did, an interview on this podcast. This is the guy who we did it with. So it's kind of a combination of getting my story out there about surviving cancer and able to share a lot of the knowledge I have in sports, and use my gift that God has given me, which is my knowledge of sports and my testimony, to give glory back to Him.
Right. So give your website, though, because I want people to be able to...
My website is ckmagicsports.com.
Right.
Yep.
And if they were to contact you?
And to contact me, ckmagicsports@gmail. And also, if you go to my website, if you click on my story, you can read about my story. And then if you click on Knockout Cancer link, you're able to go to my Patreon site, which then you're able to help donate to my cost of dealing with the sicknesses I deal with, and also to help support my podcast, which is really important because, as you know, these things don't go on for free, at least especially a podcast.
Right.
So, but also with the other battle I have with my health, that's something that I need help with as well.
Right, right. Okay, very good. Just want to thank you, and thank you for the fact of taking time to share your testimony, and wish you didn't have to go through that trial. But you know what? You will have more of a platform of a message to share than somebody sometimes who becomes a professional baseball player and just wastes all that money and not really have anything to speak about. So
well, I know God has a plan, and
right.
He's still able to use me no matter everything I've been through.
Thank you. Yeah.
And if He can use someone like me, then He can use anybody.
Appreciate it. Thank you. So thank you so much for joining us today. And if you could like my Inspired Blessings Facebook page, so you'll find out about all the different interviews of the different guests. And keep Inspired Blessings within arm's reach to help give you comfort when others are at a loss for words. Thank you, and God bless. www.jeanmarieprince.com. To accept and receive Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, please say this prayer. I know that I am a sinner who needs forgiveness. Jesus, please forgive me for all my sins and purify me. I know that you died and rose again to pay for my sins. I need you to be my Lord and Savior for the rest of my life. Thank you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
With man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible.